What's the fastest way you have seen somebody ruin their life? Story 1. A guy I went to high school with was kicked out of his college ROTC and moved back home. After some time of living at home, his dad walked into his bedroom and went off about him being a lazy bum and needing to do something with his life. So, he decided he was going to take his gun and rob a bank. Supposedly, the gun wasn't loaded, but he did successfully rob the bank and get away. Some time went by. He moved out of his parents' house and started living it up. Eventually, he told someone he trusted. That person turned him in. He was arrested and charged. He got a count for every person who was in the bank because he had a gun. You can decide if he ruined his life when he decided to rob the bank or when he decided to tell someone that he did it. Story 2. Some guy tried to come into my nightclub when he was clearly too drunk. I made the call to not let him in, so he starts shouting at me and tries to aggressively walk up to me. I put my hands up in defense and he's pushing back against me. Then the dude lunged at my boss next to me, so my boss shoves him. The guy tumbles backward and slams the back of his head on a curb. Paralyzed from the neck down, forever. He tried to take my boss to court for $15 million, but the camera showed this guy instigating it. Story 3. When I was in my early 20s, I worked as an energy worker in field service. One of my really close friends was someone I was on calls with regularly. A project lead pressured both of us to work on equipment we weren't qualified or trained to work on. Unfortunately, we relented. We were halfway done with the task when I walked out to the truck to grab water bottles. Halfway to the truck, I hear a giant buzz, then a huge bang, then screaming. By the time I get back to the generator room, he's fully on fire. The cabinet had arc blasted, and he had been right in the way. By the time I got our fire blanket from the truck, he was basically fully engulfed. I was able to put him out and get him into as much of a recovery position as I could. Then I called our shop to organize a rescue. He somehow survived 80 to 90% second and third degree burns, but coded so many times, he ended up with severe brain damage from oxygen deprivation. He lost his eyes, his sense of smell and taste, and much of his sense of touch. I think he lost his hearing too, from the noise of it. He's now in a vegetative state in a full-time care facility. I had frequent nightmares for years about it. The thing that stuck with me the most was, since the arc blast hit him basically right in the face, it boiled his skin off. I ran in and saw him ripping large pieces of his face off while trying to bat the flames off. The smell and sight of that never goes. Story 4. My brother. He had 5 kids, a wife, and some rage issues. About 25 years ago, he was at his son's soccer game. One of the other dads struck up a conversation about soccer with my brother's wife. My brother freaking lost his mind. He punched that guy, grabbed his wife by the hair, and dragged her to his truck. Several witnesses testified about this later. Once they got home, he entered the kitchen, shoved his wife up against the fridge, and strangled her to death. The kids testified to this. He then loaded the kids into his truck, grabbed his Second Amendment, and headed toward the city. His plan was to unalive me, our father, his kids, and then himself. To quote, spare them all from the shame. Thankfully, he had threatened this many times to many people. Traffic was terrible that day, and he was intercepted by police. He served over 20 years of his sentence. I testified twice at his parole hearings, trying to prevent him from getting out, because I knew what he was and always would be. He was eventually released but died 2 days later in a car accident. Story 5. A guy my mom had gone on a couple of dates with was distraught when she broke it off with him. The reason? His alcoholism. She was raised by a drunk and didn't want her kids exposed to it. He was so upset that he decided to go to his sister's house a few miles away to drown his sorrows. In his drunken state, he decided to drive back to our apartment and beg my mom to take him back. On the way there, he hit a family of 3 with his pickup truck. The parents survived, but the 5-year-old little boy was unalived. I don't remember the guy really. Steve something, I think. But I'll never forget that little boy I never met. His name was Alex Bishop, and he died in Kent, Washington. This happened in 1992. I still think of him and his parents suffering fairly often. I was 13, and it traumatized me, knowing that I had met someone who unalived a baby. The piece of poop did 10 years in prison for vehicular homicide. Apparently, he also had a 5-year-old. Story 6. This happened at a security company, before I worked there, but coworkers told me the story. A guy was doing well at his job. He got lots of promotions and was on his way to becoming a lieutenant. But he was too into his job and bought a police scanner he would listen to. One day, just as he was getting off work, a high-speed chase went by. He jumped into his personal vehicle with his firearm, got ahead of the chase, blocked the suspect in, and pulled his gun. Suddenly, the cops were much more interested in him. The crazy guy with a gun. He got hit with several felony charges. Story 7. A pretty successful woman at a company I worked at got drunk one night. She took an Uber home from a party. When she got there, she realized she left her keys behind. So she decided to climb up to her second-story balcony to get her spare set. She slipped, paralyzed herself, couldn't work for a year, racked up ridiculous medical debt, and the pandemic left her position useless, so she was let go. Story 8. My former roommate had a great job, made great money, and owned a house. I rented a room there. But he was a serious alcoholic and a total piece of poop. He'd get up at 4:30 a.m. to go to work, get off at 2, and then hit the bar until 11, every single night. Unless he had a girl coming over, then he'd come home at 10, do a quick cleanup of his filthy room, and have loud, obnoxious, inconsiderate fun time. One night, drunk driving home, he hit a guy who was riding his bike. He fled the scene, came home, and told a neighbor he hit a pole. The neighbor called the police. On the way to the house, they found the guy he hit, with the bumper of my roommate's car sitting next to the body. He went to jail for vehicular homicide, did 6 months and got out. Now he lives with his parents and can't get a job because his story is a little infamous in our town. His sister took over his mortgage and lives in his house now. All he does is cry on Facebook about how life isn't fair and badmouths the guy he Story 9. This just happened a few months ago. My friend was hanging out in front of a local bar. His girlfriend was bartending. It was Halloween, and a drunk regular was dressed as Bill the Butcher. He had a real knife as part of his costume and wasn't being discreet. The bar owner kicked him out. While escorting him, they got into a fight in front of the bar. The drunk guy pulled out a gun and started shooting. One person was unalived, and 2 others were injured. My friend tackled him to keep him from hurting more people and was shot 3 times himself. He is now a quadriplegic. I wouldn't say he ruined his life. He heroically sacrificed a huge part of it to save. Story 10. After most of the guests had left our home at the end of my son's 2nd birthday, we heard a loud crash outside. A guy driving down our street had flipped his car upside down. His front-wheel drive vehicle made contact with the tire of a parked car, and the rubber on rubber flipped it. I rushed out barefoot, saw empty beer cans thrown from his car, and cut my legs on the glass trying to check on him. Turns out, he didn't have a seatbelt on. During the flip, he was partially ejected through the sunroof, and when the car landed, his head was pinned between the ground and the main roof support. I could hear agonal breathing. Got my sister-in-law to call an ambulance. Since the car was still pressing on his head, I went against standard advice, got bystanders to help lift the car, and slid him out while stabilizing his neck. He continued to breathe like that. The ambulance arrived and took him away. I doubt he survived, but I never found out. Because I got his blood, and, based on what came out of his ears, some brain matter, on me, I had to take medication to reduce my chance of getting HIV. The meds made me feel like I had the flu for weeks. All that to say, wear your seatbelts. You can die going just 20 miles per hour if you get unlucky. And maybe don't rush to help someone barefoot and insured. Story 11. My nephew was driving a borrowed truck with a buddy. They picked up a quote friend. The buddy shot that friend twice in the head and unalived him. Then they dumped the body, returned the truck blood and bullet holes still there, and went home. The next day, they went back to clean the truck. They were both arrested for murder. My nephew pled guilty to a lesser charge and testified against the shooter. Did a few years in prison, got out, and is no longer welcome anywhere. He's stuck in South Dakota due to the felony conviction. Nobody in the family wants to help him, and he's known in that town as a Story 12. My childhood crush and next-door neighbor grew up to have anger and alcohol problems. One day, I Googled him like people sometimes do with folks from the past. I found out he had been sentenced to 98 years in state prison with no chance of parole. He had gotten liquored up, shoved his girlfriend around, and ended the night in an armed standoff with police from his apartment windows. He shot at them multiple times. Thank God he didn't unalive anyone. I lost touch with him when we were 15. We were 33 when that happened. I'm 45 now. He'll die in prison. I think about it. Story 13. Guy I knew had everything going for him. Married a coworker, had a kid, bought a small house. But when he got drunk, he made the worst decisions. One night, after an argument with his wife, he stormed out to drown his sorrows. Missed the last bus home, and instead of walking or getting a taxi, decided to sleep in a park known for homeless drug users. He vented to them, saying he'd do anything to numb the pain. They offered him heroin. He took it. 3 days later, his family was in a panic. They could see he was withdrawing money, but couldn't find him. Eventually, they found him passed out in an alley. His mom booked him into rehab out of her own pocket. He lost his job, his wife, his kid, and his house. All because he didn't want to face his wife after an argument. He's managed to cobble together a life now, but you can't help but think what could have. Story 14, I've told this one before, was at a brewery with a buddy. We were regulars and knew the owners. A group of guys came in, and one of them got absolutely plastered. Pretty sure he was also doing something harder. He looked like he was about to collapse, so I invited him to sit at our booth. We talked a bit. I asked what hobbies he had. He said he liked video games. I replied, I love video games too. I'm a game designer. Then he stood up and said, frick you. Confused, I just stared and said, what? He yelled, this guy's making fun of me. Me and my buddy explained I wasn't making fun of him. I even said, I can't tell if you're serious or just freaking with me. Then he slapped me hard across the face. He said, can you tell now? I was stunned. I said, you can't just slap people. That's not okay. The bartender, who's a friend of mine, saw everything. He was a big guy and immediately kicked the drunk out. Here's the kicker. This was a work outing for him. Later, I found out from my brother, who worked at the same place, that the guy got fired. His fiancée left him too. She had apparently been at the bar. Story 15. There was a guy I knew called Pete, better known as Party Pete. He liked to drink. And soon, he seemed to think he had to live up to that nickname. He worked at a takeaway in town, but lived up a hill on the outskirts. One morning, his boss's wife passed by the shop and saw the door wide open. She went in to check and found Pete passed out, halfway in and halfway out of the entrance. She woke him up and asked what he was doing. He called her a female dog. And that was the end of his job. But Pete didn't worry. He'd been selling drugs from the takeaway, and now he just made that his full-time job. No more worrying about early mornings. He leaned fully into the Party Pete persona. At Christmas, I was at a friend's house. Dinner, drinks, good vibes. Then Pete showed up uninvited. He spilled wine on a guest's white dress. He knocked over a framed photo of the host's late father spilling a drink on it, too. They told him it was time to leave. Then he messed up for good. He drove home, crashed into a woman's car parked in her driveway. She came out and said she was calling the police. He offered her 2,000 euros. She replied, "What use is that? You destroyed my car." She called the cops. They asked for ID. He said it was at home. They drove him there and told him to go get it. He went inside. After a few minutes, they checked on him. He had fallen asleep. And on the kitchen table was a fruit bowl full of drugs. He was arrested. The cops gave him a way out, named the other dealers. He named everyone, even his housemate. He even named the main supplier, a guy down the valley nicknamed Killer. When he got out, Killer's people came looking. He couldn't go out, couldn't stay home. His parents had to pack him up and take him away. No one's heard from him. Story 16. One of my lifelong friends, a perfectly healthy 35-year-old guy, was driving back from a wedding. It was late, and he didn't know the road well. He got a text from his mom, looked down, and didn't see the sharp curve ahead. Flew into a ditch. He was able to call 911, and they got him out. He had broken his lower back and is now paralyzed from the belly button down. No control over bowels or bladder. Can't feel or move anything below. He's been in a care facility for months. Story 17. My former boss managed the fast food place I worked at in high school. He was married with 2 stepdaughters, one in college, one in high school. One night, his wife asked him for a divorce. He snapped, grabbed a knife and stabbed her. When the older stepdaughter tried to help, he stabbed her too. His wife was unalived. The stepdaughter survived. He was charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder. He claimed temporary insanity, said it was a crime of passion. The jury didn't buy it. He's now serving life with no parole. Appeals denied. Story 18. I used to work at a dinner theater with horses in Chicago. One guy joined us after moving from Florida. He had worked at Disney, apparently. He was out of shape and slow, but showed up every day and eventually got better. He was training for a promotion. Then one day, he didn't show up. Our manager called his number. His brother answered and vaguely said he had, quote, legal trouble. That night, we were watching the news in the locker room. Breaking story, a massive cheese pizza ring had been exposed, and our guy was at the center of it. He had terabytes of cheese pizza material he had shot and produced in Florida, and a huge client list. Last we heard, he was doing 25 to life in cook. Story 19. This one happened in one moment. A husband, wife, and daughter were eating late at our restaurant last table of the night. The wife and daughter raised their voices at the husband, yelling in a scolding, condescending way. My mom knew the family. They were part of our ethnic community. Turns out, the husband had a huge gambling problem. That night, he used their home as collateral for a loan and lost everything at the casino. The family was now broke, homeless, and drowning in debt. He drove all 3 of them off a cliff. They didn't survive. That hit home for me. My dad was also a gambler. Story 20. In the early 90s, the secretary at my dad's engineering firm had a feeling she was about to be fired. So, she went to the hardware store and bought the biggest magnet she could find. When she got fired later that day, she stuck it on her computer tower and walked out. Next day, they found all her files corrupted. She had been secretary to the company president. A lot was lost. She had a really hard time finding another job after. Story 21. A group of suburban high school guys. Smart, well-off, upper middle class. Some were into sports, some into music, but not the usual cliques. Eventually, drugs crept into their hangouts. One day in 10th or 11th grade, one of them debated letting his younger brother, in 7th or 8th grade, hang out with them. On Monday, they laughed about how messed up the younger brother got on whatever substance they gave him. The older guys all grew up and became successful. One of them just got promoted to CEO. The little brother, he spiraled into addiction and died of an overdose at night. Story 22. A group of boys at my high school huffed after school, then got into a truck. The driver passed out at a red light, went through it, and crashed. He died. Another passenger in the truck was unalived. So was the driver of the car they hit, a young mom and guardian of another student who had already lost both parents. The 3 other passengers in the truck had serious injuries. Tragically stupid. Story 23. A guy from my school tried to rob a corner shop at knife point. He pulled up on a pushbike, walked in, and demanded the money. The shopkeeper refused. Too scared to escalate, the guy grabbed a pack of gum and ran. 20 minutes later, he realized he left his bike behind. He came back, while police were interviewing the shopkeeper. They arrested him on the spot. He got 2 years for stealing gum at night. Story 24. At one of my high school's basketball games, there was a donation stand for Hurricane Katrina victims. This kid from my grade walked up in front of teachers and students, grabbed the massive container of money, and bolted out of the gym and across the football field. Halfway across, he had an asthma attack. He was easily taken down and arrested. Got expelled too. It was a pretty large amount of money. Honestly, it was stupid and Story 25. My half-brother thought it was a great idea to rob the restaurant he worked at. No mask, no voice change, just walked in. He was deep into crack at the time, so his judgment wasn't exactly sharp. He convinced his dealer's girlfriend to help him. She got him a gun. Turned out to be a BB gun, but he didn't check. They actually got away with $7,000, but the dealer and his huge friends were waiting outside. They beat him unconscious and took the money. The cops showed up and arrested him. He got 7 years for armed robbery and grand larceny, but hey, he kicked the drug habit in prison. Story 26. A kid I went to school with used to break into homes with his little brother, mostly stealing phones. Everyone figured they were off, but no one thought they were dangerous. Then one night, they broke into the wrong house. As they crept into the kitchen, the homeowner, a former Marine, walked in for a glass of water. A struggle broke out. One of the kids pulled a knife and repeatedly stabbed the man in the head. They ran off, but were arrested the next day. One's still in juvie 5 years later. The other got 30 years. The homeowner survived, but now suffers from serious mental. Story 27. My sister and her husband got hooked on crack. They lost their jobs, lost their house, and dragged their kids across the country. The kids hated them for it. After a DUI, my sister decided to get clean. Her husband kicked her out for that. She came back home with nothing, stayed sober, and eventually got her life in. A year later, the kids moved in with her. Now she's buying a house. Meanwhile, her ex lives with his mom and works just to support his habits. She ruined her life for a while, but pulled it back together. Story 28. A few years ago, a student at the university I work at tried to sneak a bunch of drugs into a nightclub. Police showed up at our office with a warrant. I was the lucky one who had to unlock his dorm room. When I opened the door, wow, it looked like an old candy shop, big jars full of pills and powder, covering every surface. Everything else in the room was spotless. He was 3 months away from finishing his master's. Now he's in prison for at least a decade, maybe 2, for possession with intent to supply. Also expelled, still owes £60,000 in student loan. Story 29. Guy I knew sold weed, that's it. Then, one day, he decided out of nowhere that he was going to rob someone. Got a gun, didn't test the waters, just jumped right in. A few hours later, he was arrested. Bail set at $70,000. He's not getting out, charged with robbery, first-degree possession of stolen property, illegal firearm, intent to sell. Didn't even last one day on the road. Story 30. I knew a guy who switched university majors midway to become a teacher in a subject he loved. He finished his degree and got qualified, but he's no longer a teacher. Why? He slept with 2 underage students, verbally harassed them after. There was also a failed 3rd attempt. Then he fled to Italy, no connection there, just ran. Eventually came back and turned himself in. Got nearly 3 years in prison, paroled halfway, now on the UK sex offender register for 10 years, banned from teaching for life. Some said his classroom behavior was already off, but not criminal enough to act on. Nobody knows what he does. Story 31. My former high school teacher, retired English teacher, coach, senior class advisor, a mentor to many. His wife was a teacher. His kids graduated from our school. One day, he gave a talk to my class about planning for the future. 2 weeks later, the news broke. His house had been raided. He ran into the woods behind his property and ended his life. They found laptops filled with illicit material. The whole town was shaken. His wife retired that same year. She and the kids were investigated. They knew nothing. Just shows how well people can hide their story. 32. A friend of mine was 3 years from retirement. Had a great life. Home, family, everything stable. Then he picked up meth again and taught his 18-year-old son how to use and party. Didn't go back to work. Lied to his wife about why. One night, he texted me and his brother that by the time we read the message, he'd be gone. His brother called for a welfare check. Cops found meth in the house. Now he's losing his home, living in a trailer. He had it all and threw it away. Story 33. A kid in my 10th grade class got a Mustang from his parents after getting his license. He had the need for speed. One night, going 120 miles per hour on back roads with 3 friends. They collided head-on with a family of 4. 7 people died. The only survivor was a 15-year-old girl from the other car. She walked away after a few minor surgeries. Her entire family gone. That was 12 years ago. I wonder how she's doing now. Story 34. When I was a baby, my mom had an affair and left us for her new partner. Thought the grass was greener. Turned out, the guy was a raging alcoholic. Pawned her jewelry, hired escorts, lost his job. Put my mom through hell. He died of liver failure. She's alone now. I think the guilt eats at her. I'm not angry anymore. My dad never spoke a bad word about her in my 35 years. He raised me and my brother with grace. He's an incredible man. Story 35. Worked at a gas station once. A woman wanted smokes but didn't have ID. Got mad when I said no, then stole a banana on her way out. A cop nearby saw it and stopped her. It was supposed to be petty, but then 2 more cruisers pulled up. Turns out she had 8 warrants in 3 states for drugs and theft. She got taken in, all because of a pack of swishers and a banana. Story 36. A friend of mine got promoted, and her older coworker became her subordinate. She had no idea he was obsessed with her. She was friends with his family, even had brunch with his wife. He got a copy of her house key made and waited years for the perfect time to break in. Tried it while she was on vacation. A neighbor saw him and called her. He lost everything. Wife, house, kids, job. Now he lives alone in a 1-bedroom in another. Story 37. A guy I went to middle school with met a 13-year-old on Fortnite. Traveled from Pennsylvania to Georgia to meet him. The kid got spooked and told the cops. They set up a sting. Turns out the guy had a massive stash of illicit material on his computers. He's now serving nearly 10 years in federal prison. He had a good job at a private school, was a basketball coach, and also tutored kids with special needs. Terrifying what he could have done. Also, he used to bully me, so no sin. Story 38. A guy with a 6-figure IT job stole a $600 laptop. We had low-jacked all of them. He waited a month before booting it up on his home Wi-Fi. It pinged us instantly. Network name was literally his last name. He confessed and got fired. Here's the kicker. He was the second person in IT to do this, and he knew what happened to the first guy. When we hired his replacement, I jokingly asked, "Do you ever get the urge to just steal stuff?" Whole team laughed. Story 39. I have 2 stories. First, a guy I grew up with was smart, kind, never got into trouble. The black sheep of a rough family. At 19, he was out drinking. Someone bumped into him and spilled his drink. His friend escalated it. The other guy pushed back. My friend punched him. The guy fell, hit his head, and died. Manslaughter. He's been in and out of prison ever since. Could have escaped the cycle, but didn't. Second, my ex-girlfriend was studying to be a doctor. Smart, beautiful, driven. Went to a party, drank a lemonade. Didn't know it was drugged. Drove home, the wrong way on the highway. Head-on collision. Both drivers seriously hurt. She pleaded guilty. Got 3 months in prison. Lost her license. She never drove again. Carries sealed soda bottles everywhere. The anxiety and depression hit her. Story 40. A well-known pastor in my town had an affair. Wife left him. Girlfriend left him. Lost his job. Lost his house. Now he only sees his kids twice a month. Outside those visits, he's alone in a tiny apartment, working remote. He barely goes outside. Friends say the only thing keeping him alive is the little time he gets with his. Story 41, not super fast, but the outcome was devastating. A woman I knew got a windfall of nearly $500,000. Divorced her husband, bought an expensive house, started dating a younger guy. Got pregnant, got engaged. Within a year, the money was gone. Her new fiance dumped her after she became emotionally abusive. Her ex got full custody of their kids, thanks to corroborating reports from the new guy. She now has supervised visits. All of that in under 12 months. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider dropping a like and subscribing. It would truly mean the world.